Uh, let's go ahead and take some time in practice first. So I'll go ahead and lead us through a little bit of guided meditation, and then we'll move on from there. Take a little bit of time to establish the posture for sitting. And as well, establishing the kind of breath that is supportive of the practice. In particular, a breath that is both relaxed and also energetic. Breathing in such a way that our breath is relaxed, our body is also relaxed. And at the same time, the breath is energizing, invigorating. We're engaged with the breath. Often seems like if we want to breathe in a way that's relaxed, we have to not breathe in a way that's energetic. It seems like energetic and relaxed are in different directions. But as we do this practice, we can find a way of breathing that is both of these at the same time. Breath that is so energetic that it has to be relaxed. That is calm, grounded, stable, stabilizing. And yet at the same time, that the whole body engages with. Using this breath, relaxed, energetic breath in this stable, upright, yet relaxed posture. Attend to body sensations. making use of this breath and posture to say yes to every body sensation. Letting in any sense of grief, fear, or shame. Knowing that we aren't alone in this. Many others feel this way as well. This is our chance to understand that and to be with that. Doing our best to stay with the body sensations. And use this breath and posture to aid us in staying with the direct experience of our body at this moment. We don't know how to directly experience body sensations. We can just face that. Be with that experience. Be with any stories that come up around that experience. Stories like, I'm inadequate, or I'm incompetent, or I'm bad, or any other variety of story that we may be telling. As we sit, continuing to use this relaxed, energetic breath, this upright, relaxed posture, to be with this experience of body sensations as it is. If there's peace, letting in peace. If there's grief, letting in grief. Letting our body experience peace. Letting our body experience grief. The peacefulness falls off, goes away, let it go. The grief falls off, goes away, let it go. It comes back, sticks around, it seems to get bigger and bigger. Let's do our best to stay with that as it is. Striving to experience this prior to any of our stories about it. Just this body sensation, whatever it is, before we make sense of it, before we understand it, before we know why. Or you could equally well say beyond, after having completed understanding of it, stories about it. Just feel this experience. Let yourself be moved by this as it is. It's important that we allow ourselves to grieve, Feel the sense of loss, pain, of the extinction of life, loss of our way of life, our plans, our ideas. Let that all in. And at the same time, to let in any sense of joy, happiness, exhilaration, kind of happiness that doesn't need to make sense, kind of joy that doesn't need to be explained, that is present to whatever extent it's present. It's essential that we let that in. Kind of joy that's been called the great joy of being alive, or the great joy of being with, sitting with everyone in the whole world. As we sit here, the trees are outside, the animals are outside. Even if we are alone in a room in a building, in fact, the building isn't some kind of special boundary. We are with everyone. They're all right here on this magnificent earth. Again, the basic instruction is just to use this breath, the breath that we are cultivating, that is relaxed and also energetic. Use the posture, the way that we sit upright, tall, and yet also grounded, relaxed, to experience body sensations as they are. Experience body sensations as they are means that we stay with the pure embodied sensation prior to any stories, any explanations, any ways of understanding it. When stories are happening, we're thinking about things, and just let that be. Allow that to happen in the background without any need to do anything about it. In the same way, we don't need to do anything about cars passing by on the street, birds chirping in the trees. These stories are just one more part of nature. Energetic breath, relaxed breath, long and slow. Allowing the breath to pull us in and down. Okay, so nice to see you today. The other residents and apprentices are currently in silence in Berkeley. I'm at another location at the moment where I can give this talk without disturbing their practice. And as I mentioned to them last night, the retreat started last night, and it's quite an auspicious time, actually, to do a retreat. The one that we did in March, the March Awakening Week, was, it started on the 13th of March, which was a Friday, which was its own kind of auspicious. And world events were in accord with that. Yes. Very different world to come out of retreat from versus going into. So this time is auspicious in a bit of a different way. And in a way that I think is actually quite relevant for what we've chosen to talk about today. So the topic today, of course, is a global response. And the question that I've posed, that I'm asking, is how we can make use of the response to coronavirus pandemic to muster an adequate response to the much larger issues that are currently facing life on Earth. The issues of ecological destruction, of the acceleration of AI and modern technology, and the still ongoing threat of terminal nuclear war that we never really resolved. What to do with these existential risks, and in particular, how to leverage, make use of the response, what we've learned, and how we're responding and how we're orienting towards this current crisis to address those larger crises. Which are, of course, larger in terms of the cost to human life. There will be many, many more refugees and fatalities due to climate change than due to even the worst projections of coronavirus. They're currently, just right now, just to give one example, building a wall in India around Bangladesh in order to keep the, I don't know exactly how many, but at least tens of millions of people in Bangladesh as the sea levels rise and destroy their lives. That wall is being built with much more fervor than the wall that's being built on the Mexico-US border, and no one is confused about why that wall is being built, and that's just one example of what is currently happening in regard to climate change, and that's just one of the major existential threats facing the planet. What these threats have in common, at least the big ones, as far as I can tell, is that they are all products of, produced by the human mind, the activity of humans. We invented nukes. We have produced a massive industrial complex that is producing enormous amounts of greenhouse gases and also killing much life. And we are rushing headlong towards ever more powerful attentional manipulation algorithms. So naturally, I asked you to think about ways that we can address this prior to the call, and I hope that we spend a lot of time today actually just hearing from you. But I thought I would open up with my own answer to this. At least the main answer, maybe not the only one, but the main one that I've been devoting my life to for the last few years. And the answer actually has a lot to do with why this is an auspicious time, why this weekend in particular is an auspicious weekend. Because the answer, as far as I can tell, at least the one that I'm working on, is to tell a story that is true and useful and wins. To make up a meme, a story, an idea that wins, that outcompetes other memes, other stories, other ideas in the marketplace of ideas, and at the same time is in a way true, accurate, correct, and is also useful, ethical, that leads to ethical behavior due to its presence in the world. And in my own personal opinion, I think that Christianity is an example of this having happened in history. Of course, yesterday was Good Friday, tomorrow is Easter Sunday. This is an extremely auspicious time in the Christian tradition. And I personally owe an enormous amount to this tradition. Of course, we can talk about the issues with that tradition, with Christianity. Christianity has many issues, it has caused many problems, and yet, I would say on the whole, it's been of enormous benefit. It's been of a great help to me personally, and of a great help, as far as I can tell, to the world at large. Primarily by slowing down the progress of the increasing power of the human mind over the world. It slowed that process down. And in so doing, bought the planet a long time, maybe a few centuries, before we had enough power, enough resources, enough intelligence to invent things like nuclear weapons. It bought us maybe 8 centuries by giving people something to pursue other than what we wanted, other than what we had craving for. You know, we can complain about it, we can say that it had problems, it didn't do that so well, it caused a bunch of other problems. This is all true. I don't disagree with any of this. And yet at the same time, I would argue that the reason that we're here having this conversation today is that Christianity slowed down this progress. And again, this has been one of the most interesting features of the coronavirus pandemic. That just through sheer coincidence, the correct response to the pandemic has been to slow down the emissions of greenhouse gas, to stop traveling so much, stop trading so much. And in seeing how willingly and eagerly we've done this, we've seen that actually it's on the table to do this. That the stories that we tell about these large-scale systems, that they're impersonal, that they're bigger than any individual, that they're emergent properties, there's nothing you can do about them, just aren't true. We've seen that if we believe that we should do something about them, then we do something about them. If we emotionally believe, if we believe in our bodies, we need to stop trade, we need to stop travel, we will do that. And that's highly significant. And Christianity succeeded spectacularly at bringing us to this sort of realization. Now, Good Friday, of course, is the celebration of, a commemoration of the date, so it says, in which Jesus was crucified, in which he died on the cross. The date on which, as the story goes, he took on all of the suffering of the world, all of the mistakenness, all of the confusion of the entire world, which, as the story goes, was taken on for our benefit. And Christianity told a good story. It was an example of this having been done. It was a story that won. There were other stories that were competing with Christianity, and Christianity won at that time in history, in the early few centuries AD. It won, and therefore, we celebrate Good Friday and Easter Sunday, even today. Now, of course, and first of all, I should say actually that in my opinion, so I don't know anything special about the historicity of the Christian story. I don't have any special knowledge about whether any of the events happened, historically speaking, to what degree of accuracy they happened or anything like that. But I will say that it's entirely plausible to me that at least the crucifixion and resurrection just straightforwardly happened as it's written down. It seems to me to be entirely plausible and entirely likely that that's just historical fact. Of course, I don't know. It could have been made up. It could have been fabricated, but it could also have easily happened. As we advance in meditation practice, we start to come upon states in which, for example, our metabolism or breathing slows down to a dramatic degree. We start to experience states in which we don't have a recognizable pulse. We don't recognizably breathe. And this is actually common. What I'm saying here is not at all out there or strange. This is an extremely well-documented phenomenon throughout any tradition that has explored meditation. People today in India are doing this all the time. It's common. You go to a village and people talk about this guy in the next village over who's been out for a few weeks. So to have someone who did that for a few days, you know, it's good, but not that interesting, not that spectacular, not that impressive. So to me, it seems entirely plausible that actually, if it happened historically, which again, I don't have any special knowledge of, I'm not making any special claims about, but if that happened historically, it seems entirely plausible that what happened there is simply that Jesus, on the cross, entered into such a state of deep concentration at that time in which he said, it is finished, in which he, as it says in the Bible, gave up his spirit, in which the spirit left him. Entirely plausible that at that time he just entered a state of deep concentration, and then they stuck him somewhere. A few days later, he woke up, and sure, he was quite injured, perhaps. It was pretty significant wounds, but nothing certainly fatal. Definitely something that one could survive, even at that point in history, with some likelihood. And so, to me, it seems entirely likely that this just straightforwardly happened. But the significance, of course, is not, well, you could say, of course, that the entire significance is Jesus' life. But the reason that the significance is Jesus' life, that Jesus' life is so significant, that it has acquired a position of such significance, is just that there needs to be someone at the center of the story. We are a very person-centered species. We tend to want there to be people at the center of stories. And so there needed to be someone at the center of the story, and so we put Jesus at the center of the story. So that someone could be at the center of the story was required by the story. But we know, if we're mature enough, that actually, in fact, we are at the center of the story. Usually we're not so mature. Usually we need someone else to be at the center of the story. Jesus was willing to take on that role, to be that person, to occupy the center of the story. And so he did that out of kindness, compassion, care. And in that way, you could say truly did die for our mistakes, for our sins, for our mistakenness. The word sin, of course, originally just meant mistake. It came to take on a bunch of other meanings and significance later on, but initially just meant mistake, mistaken. So he took on our mistakenness, becoming the center of a story, because we were, and let's face it, very often still are, unwilling to acknowledge the true center of the story, which is us, ourselves, our own lives. Soryu Forall talks about how at one time in his training, so he spent a long time in a Zen monastery, training with a certain master, Harada Roshi. And he says that, and Harada Roshi, as they do, would often just say the same thing again and again to Soryu. Soryu would go into an interview, and Harada Roshi would say something, and then he would go into the next sanzen, the next interview session, and Harada Roshi would say the same thing, the same exact sentence. He would keep doing this again and again. Very frustrating, confusing. Oftentimes, this actually is just because we haven't actually heard yet what they're saying. And once we hear what they're saying, they say something else. But so Soryu would go into sanzen, and Harada Roshi would say, so Soryu plays tennis. Tennis has been a very important part of Soryu's life. So Harada Roshi would say, pick up an invisible tennis ball. He would say, you play tennis. If you look on the surface of a tennis ball, where is the center of the tennis ball? Every point on the surface of the tennis ball is the center of the tennis ball. Every point on the tennis ball is the center of the tennis ball. And then the next time around, Soryu would come in, and Harada Roshi again would say, you play tennis. If you take a tennis ball, and you look on that ball, you try to find the center. Where's the center of the tennis ball? Every point on the tennis ball is the center of the ball. You can see how this is true, yes? Because every point on the surface of the ball is the center of the ball. If you're talking about just the surface of the tennis ball, you're asking where the center of that place is. No matter where you put the point, it's in the center. It's the center point. In the same way, we, our own lives, our own experience, are at the center of the universe. We are the center of the world. We're at the very middle of the world. It all starts here. It all goes out from here. If we want to know, for example, about the origin of the world, about the origin of the universe, want to study, for example, the Big Bang. People talk about how the universe came from the Big Bang. Where is the Big Bang? Where do you look if you want to study the Big Bang? You look anywhere. You look anywhere in the universe. That's where the Big Bang is. You want to look at what happened in the Big Bang, look anywhere in the universe. This is what happens if you have a Big Bang and then some time passes. We're just the Big Bang here. That's it. So Jesus was willing to be the center of the story that we were unwilling to be at the center of. And at the same time, the job of this story, the story that wins, the story that is true and useful and wins, the job of this story has to be to help us along in going beyond that story, in escaping from that story. In terms of Christianity, that means that we strive to become, we set forth the intention to become, as they say in Spanish, the Spanish Christian tradition, Iso Christos. We become equivalent to Christ. This is the goal of Christianity if we take it on as a mystical path. Mystical just means that we are at the center of the experience. That's what the word mystical means, actually, if we're using it as a term of art, if we're using it as a description rather than a pejorative. Mystical just means that our own experience is at the center and that we place that as the highest authority. Our own direct experience rather than any religion, any doctrine, any dogma of any sort. But we strive to become Iso Christos, to become equivalent to Christ, to come to the center of the story, of history, which we discover as we walk the path, as we practice, as we devote ourselves, as we strive to live in accord with this story, which gives us certain ethical frameworks, gives us certain practices. If we're doing it sincerely, we find that we do come more and more into the center of the story, and that as we do so, we discover that we actually already were there at the center. It's not that we're coming into the center and we weren't there in the center, it's that we already were at the center. And the story is helping us to escape from our delusion about not being at the center. In other words, to escape from our delusion about having total power over what is happening throughout the entire world. Our ability to change the entire course of history, which we see has happened and is totally reasonable, has happened again and again. That people have told such stories and they have shifted the entire course of history. In Christianity, again, the planet was given another maybe millennium, certainly 8 centuries, in which life on Earth could flourish and thrive. Take the Buddhist tradition. It changed, it unified the entire continent, the subcontinent of India. It came into existence at a time in which there were many neighboring, warring clans and small kingdoms. And while, yes, of course, it wasn't alone in this, it wasn't a sole mover, there were other trends that were happening as well. The wheel had just been invented. Trade was starting to take off in a new way. Still, it played an important role in unifying that part of the world. And we see this again and again, that people undertake a spiritual tradition. That tradition unifies groups that were not able to work together coherently, cohesively, and through agreeing, through believing in the same story, unifies them. We see this happen again and again throughout history. It happened in Japan, it happened in India, happened in Europe. We see these spiritual traditions take on very different ways of seeing things and integrate them so that they're all in one cohesive whole. So that people who wouldn't have gotten along at all can work cooperatively on the same project. And of course, it isn't that they totally eliminate conflict, and it isn't that they do a perfect job of this. Please don't hear either of those claims in what I'm saying. I don't mean to be making them. Obviously, they were imperfect. Obviously, there was conflict. There were problems. It's, I think, a great tragedy that we so often come to associate religion, and in particular Christianity, with problems. Because I would say that although it's true that it has produced a lot of that is just that it has taken on an enormous amount of conflict, an enormous amount of problematicness, and is working with that. You can say that there are problems with Christianity in the same way that you can say there are bacteria with antibiotics. If you just look at the antibiotics in the world, they are often around bacteria. You could say then, therefore, that antibiotics cause bacteria. You shouldn't say this. We introduce antibiotics because there's bacteria, because we need to do something about all the bacteria. In the same way, we introduce religion, spirituality, in order to unify conflicting, competing, fighting groups of people. And so the goal I would say, if we want to respond to the current situation adequately, is to do that here and now. To do just the same again and again throughout history, here and now. And at this time, in this case, to find a story, to create, innovate a story that allows the entire world to work together. Because for the first time in history, the entire world is connected. We're connected at a level greater than we ever have been before. We're able to have a conversation together at a higher bandwidth than we ever have before. So to have a religion, a story, a way of seeing things that works at that level, that unifies the entire globe, and that makes it possible for the entire globe to cooperate. Probably by agreeing on the same story, sadly. As a mystical practitioner, I would like that this were not the case. I would like to find a way of cooperating that isn't based on just mere agreement on a story, but practically speaking, pragmatically, it seems to me that you do need to have a story if you want large enough numbers of people to work together. And so this, just to get into the nuts and bolts of it a little bit, is, I think, what is needed if you want this sort of project to win. If you look at it historically, what's happened, and if you look at what we're doing now, how we're approaching it, you basically need a few different ingredients. So first of all, you need mystics. If you want to do this project, you need mystics. You need people, and mystics, again, just means people who whose job is to come to a direct experience of reality, of truth. Where reality or truth means both accurate, in other words, the map corresponds to the territory, if you want to talk about it in those terms, but also means ethical, also means beneficial, means good, both accurate and good. If you're doing that, if your job is to do that, to experience and then teach, to understand, realize, and then transmit the experience of truth that is also beneficial, then you are a mystic. That's just what that job description is. It's the description of that job. So you need mystics. If you want to have this project work, you need some people who are just looking at reality and who, moreover, are looking at reality independently of any story. People who are going beyond, independent of, free from every single religion, every single story, every single way of seeing things. Because otherwise, you don't have a way of knowing which stories are true, which stories are useful, which stories are beneficial. If you haven't gone beyond stories, if there's any story that you haven't gone beyond, then you're just going to believe that story. And that belief in that story is going to bias everything that you do inescapably. And so we need there to be some people who have escaped from all stories. Then you need a story. Next ingredient is that you need some kind of story. You need some way of talking about what life is, what is going on here, and therefore what we should do. A story that should have positive ethical consequences. And if you take the story on, your life should actually shift in positive ways ethically. And I would actually make the claim that Christianity does this. Of course, not perfectly. It doesn't bring people to a state of ethical perfection. But it is, for example, well documented that in parts of the world where there is more Christianity, there is less alcoholism, less drug abuse. In parts of the world where there's more drug abuse, more alcoholism, there's less Christianity. So of course, we can say, well, it's an imperfect story, it's an imperfect ethical framework, and it has a bunch of problems, and that's true. But we have to acknowledge that we, by being able to say that, are somewhat privileged. We are impressive people in terms of ethics to some degree. If we're talking about most of the world, then we're not talking about a choice between Christianity and reason derived from pure experience, or rather ethics derived from pure reason and experience. We're talking about choice between Christianity and alcoholism, a choice between Christianity and abuse, violence. And, of course, you therefore find that people who take that story on do have problems, just less than they had before. So you wanted to have those consequences. You want to have ethical consequences. You want the story to produce positive behavior change, and you also want the story to lead you out of the story. You want the story to not allow you to get stuck in it. I would say that probably this is something that this is something that I would say Buddhism has probably done a better job of than any other tradition I'm currently aware of in the world, of helping you to escape from the story. It turns out to actually be quite challenging to have people not just get stuck in the story. It's very common that we look at the finger instead of the moon, that we believe in the story so fully that we actually get trapped in the story. Although I would say that Christianity also does a okay job at this. Not a perfect job, not even really a great job, but an okay job at this. It has all of these contradictions in it. It has all these problems with it. You read the Bible and this part says one thing and that part says another thing. You say, what's going on here? There are all these holes in the story. Well, it's actually helpful. It's actually useful that those holes are there. Holes are there to help you go beyond the story, help you not get confused and think that the story is ultimately true. So you need to have those features. You need to have a story that has those features. And then finally, you need resources. You want this to work. This institution, this story needs resources, needs to win, needs to gather a lot of, at first, of course, attentional resources. People tell it a lot, spread it around to each other, retell it so that it does well mimetically, and then ultimately other resources, financial resources. It has to actually ultimately command power in terms of the power that is available, which is primarily the market and the state. So if you look in history at this having been tried before, you need these ingredients. And you see that in cases where this has succeeded, these ingredients have been present. So in the case of Zen, for example, you had mystics. You had people who were truly looking at reality. In the Zen Buddhist tradition, you had people who were authentically practicing kindness and awakening to an impressive degree, and who told an incredible story, an impressive story. The story of, for example, Bodhidharma. Incredible story. And also, and by the way, who unified enormously divergent schools of thought, who brought together Taoism and Confucianism in China, which were two schools of thought that were very alien to each other, in extreme competition with each other. Much like maybe Christianity and materialistic humanism in the modern world. Schools that different from each other, that unified those, that somehow managed to agree with and respect and improve both of those. So Zen produced this incredible story based on having people who truly walked the path, and then got an enormous tax break from the government of China, didn't have to pay taxes for a few centuries, and that was sufficient in the case of Zen to cement it in a position of dominant religion in that part of the world. That's why when I'm talking to people, I say, we talk about fundraising goals, for example. Part of what Monastic Academy is working on is fundraising. It's a useful skill to teach, and people sometimes want to know, well, how much money can you use? And the answer is, of course, we can use, say, $10,000 for this, or up to $100,000 for that, or up to maybe $5 million for something. But really the answer for us to succeed, for us to achieve our goal, is we need to raise, how much money is there? We need to raise that much. $70 trillion, whatever that is. Whatever the amount of money is, that's the amount of money that we need to raise. Because we need to ultimately replace that story, that way of doing things, based on a market that approximates reality quite badly. You need to replace that with something that's more accurate and more beneficial. Well, therefore, we need all of the resources in that market. That's the amount of money that we have to raise. That's the amount of resources that we acquire. And if we're talking about a story, we're talking about an exponential growth process, that's just what we're looking at. If you're planning to win the mimetic game, then you're planning to ultimately have that level of resource. Those are the two possibilities. Either you fail, you don't win, you don't succeed at the mimetic game, you get outcompeted by some other story, someone else wins, or you win and you wind up, you just have to, you just are now in the position of having to decide what happens with $70 trillion. Based on the story that you've produced, based on the insight that you've gained, based on the practice that you've done. Therefore, it's of extreme urgency, of extreme importance that we have people who are authentically doing this practice, who are authentically going beyond stories, who are authentically going beyond the need to acquire anything. Because if you don't have that, if you don't have, if to whatever extent you are still dependent on acquisition, still dependent on acquiring, on getting, on being satisfied, you've set up a problem. You've set up a conflict between winning and ethics. So I would say that if we want, and we means all of you, all of us, if we want to win this game of ideas, then it's of the utmost importance that we escape from ideas. So we'll spend a little bit of time now practicing to escape from ideas. And then I'm looking forward to hearing from you. I'd like to hear your ideas, what you propose should be done at this time in history. Once again, take some time to establish a posture in breathing to use for this next period of time. It's well worth spending a lot of time on our posture, attending carefully to our posture, exploring different ways of sitting, and find out what waiting are conducive to practice. In particular, one way that you can work in terms of posture is to consider 5 points in the body, attend to each of them in turn. So starting with the base, the lowest part of the body, the legs, the seat. Explore how to sit with a stable base, making little micro adjustments so that our base is firmly connected to the ground, like a boulder planted halfway into the earth. And with our attention in this part of our body, locating our attention, our awareness in the lowest part of our body, place farthest away from our heads. From that place, we explore how to breathe in a way that is relaxed. Moving next to the sacrum, tailbone, explore sitting so that our tailbone is rooted into that stable base. It's common that we're either too far forward or too far back in terms of our tailbone. And explore slightly tucking the tailbone under so that our spine is straight with a natural curve. As we do this, we should experience our posture being upright and vibrant, already hinting in the direction of an energetic breath. Now cultivate that energetic breath from and with this place in our body. Next, move to the center of our body, body's center of gravity, hara, tanden, as it's sometimes called in some traditions. It's so that the center of our body is in the center of our body. It's not going too far to one side or the other, or too far back or too far forward. And to whatever extent is possible, and it's okay if this is a challenge, breathe from and with this part of the body, from and with the center of our body, so that muscles of our belly and back are what is doing the breathing. Just this is already good practice. Just to sit in a posture that is stable, rooted, centered, a breath that is relaxed and energetic and from our core. Just this alone can already help us to an enormous degree in working through various stuck traumas, stuck emotions, stuck body sensations that so often control our lives. Just sitting here, breathing in this way, sitting in this way, can already do an enormous amount to help us wriggle out of various stories, religions that we've been holding on to, various perspectives from which we have been accustomed to seeing. Moving on, continuing with that same breath, that same posture, we also open up the solar plexus, the heart, moving our solar plexus forward and up in space, as well opening up the back, so we create room to breathe. That tension between our tailbone, which is tucked, and heart, which is open. There's a little more space in the diaphragm area for the breath to move. Having opened up that space, it's possible to cultivate a breath that is playful, a breath that is of its own intelligence, that is responding to circumstances without us having to think up how it will. The way we can know if our breath is playful is simply, is it surprising? Do we know what it's going to do before it does it or not? It's okay if this is hard, if this takes a long time. Often it's the case that we just have to lose track of the breath for a moment, and then we discover, there it was. It was playful right there. And we then cultivate that. There isn't a way to make the breath playful. You can't just tell the breath, be playful now. It's as though we're a small child. Can't just tell the child, be playful now, and expect the child to immediately start playing. We have to give it some space. Let it do its thing. And then soon enough, on its own, it'll be playing. And finally, top of the spine, crown of the head is elevated. The chin slightly tucked, and the top of the head going up towards the sky. So the back of our neck is open. And once more, just checking through. The base is stable, breath is relaxed. The sacrum is rooted, breath is energetic. Center of the body is centered, breath is centered. Heart is open, breath is playful. The crown of the head is elevated. And our breath, at this point, is flowing through our whole body. Having adjusted, opened up the space in our neck, possible that our breath can flow through, can resonate through every part of our whole body. Making use of this posture and breath, just stay with the body sensations of this moment. And just to say, staying with the breath in this moment. You now have the body, have our own experience as a guide. So we can explore directly. Is there any part of the whole body that is not involved in the breath, in which the breath is stagnant, is not flowing? And so then we use this breath, we adjust our posture to let the breath in to that part as well. Coating our whole body from the base of our feet, the top of our heads, the surface of our skin to the center of our body. The whole thing is one piece. Okay, so now we have a little bit of time for, first of all, any questions, comments, or reports, any of that. And maybe after just a little bit of time on the practice, we'll open it up to also include. Actually, let's do it this way. Let's just have it be that right now, this discussion, you can ask any questions about the practice, any comments about the practice, questions or comments about the talk, or any ideas about how to make use of this moment in history. And with these ideas, of course, as with anything, we don't want to let the perfect become the enemy of the good. The ideas don't have to be perfect, and we don't have to try to make our own or each other's ideas be perfect. But at the same time, we do want to try. We want to somehow really believe that we are at the center of this. That what we come up with here may impact the entire world. And to approach it with that mindset is somewhat subtle and tricky. We often feel like we have to not take it seriously in order to be creative. If we take it seriously, then we shut down. We have to somehow do both. Not let the perfect be the enemy of the good, and yet also try. So, anything at all, feel free to just unmute and start talking.
Daniel, did you start with something? I think you unmuted first. You should start.
I was about to, yes. I was about to ask a question about the talk.
Great.
So you've mentioned that having mystics is the way that you come up with a story that is useful and true, that has wisdom and love. How do you combine that with having a story that wins, that has power as well?
Yeah, right. So you just have to be creative and try, basically. You know, this part, the power part, I have a sense is actually maybe the most well understood in the current cultural context. You know, we know how to do this if you have a startup, for example. You just get a bunch of people together and they have an idea, and then they try a bunch of things and get really messy and iterate a bunch and fail a bunch, and then suddenly something clicks and it takes off. So we're just doing that with a story that is true and useful. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So the challenge, of course, historically speaking, and now, is to have both of those at the same time. Very often, and I think maybe you could say the big challenge historically is that these tend to seem to compete and actually repel each other. The spiritual types tend to, for whatever reason, be those who are averse to power. And the power types tend to, for whatever reason, be those who are averse to wisdom beyond ideas. This is very sad. The big challenge to have all of those together at the same time is very hard. So you just do that, you know. So at Maple, the way that they're approaching this, Maple, the Monastic Academy for Preservation of Life on Earth, our sister organization in Vermont, and they just have a bunch of people in the training who are selected for wisdom, love, and power. You have to select. It would be best if you didn't select at all, but you have to select. There's just too many people to take everyone, and so you select for wisdom, love, and power. People who have at least one of those skills to a high degree. People who have a great deal of love and have demonstrated that through choices that have been socially costly, or people who have done something in the world, who've made a company or a product or something, accomplished something in terms of worldly things, and or people who are really interested in awakening, in liberation, in the path of insight. You draw from those three pools of people, and then you put them together, and they fight, and they can't escape because they committed to staying in the container, and then the magic happens over months and years. So that's the current in progress.
I look forward to what comes out of it.
Yeah. Well, Oak has come out so far. So
I look forward to the big, powerful, wise, and loving story that is the culmination of all of this.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we have one, our current work in progress, just so you know, current thing that we're iterating on is something like, there are the problems in the world. So the future of life on Earth is threatened due to problems of the human mind. We use various spiritual techniques to work through and overcome these problems in the human mind so that we can become wise, loving, powerful leaders. Using the Buddhist Eightfold Path as the way of doing that. We've found that that path seems to encompass much of what has been independently discovered since then, in terms of how to do this, in terms of how to do personal growth, for example. That's the current work in progress.
Right.
Still working on it, but that's what we got so far.
Thank you.
So, let's see. Don't let perfect be enemy good. Try hard. Yeah. Okay. So I keep coming back to this idea again and again that others have come up with, and just seems like a really good idea. And it seems like, I want to say it's either a really desirable or a necessary dependency in the, if you want to create the dominant world religion. So the idea is, you might describe it as like the Kickstarter for, what's the conditional coordination. So you have X number of people sign a contract, or however that's codified, saying they will commit to executing the terms of the contract if and only if X other people commit to executing the terms of the contract recursively. So wouldn't it be great if like 1 billion people could sign one of these to whatever terms? So that I think we should build that. I don't know how. I don't know how, like, on multiple levels, but I think it's a good idea. So that's what I'll offer.
Excellent.
Suggest.
Yeah, I think it's a really good idea, and I would love to see that take off. It seems like it should be able to take off. It seems like I mean, I don't know how you do it. You can just look at companies that exist. What did they do? It seems like you need a people person, a money person, and a technology person, and then they hire a bunch of people, and then they build something. So get those, and convince them that that's a good idea, and or become those, and do it. Great idea.
Thanks. One thing that would be helpful for this kind of thing is if anyone could suggest a initial. So I actually coincidentally I was talking with an Extinction Rebellion person in Britain who also thinks society could collapse soon. But They actually are trying to organize this independently for a rent strike in response to coronavirus, as a way to also do it for climate change. I don't personally know if a rent strike is like good or bad. Like maybe good. I guess maybe disagree and commit and help them. So that seems so. So I guess if anyone could suggest how could I help them do that, if it's a good idea. I don't know what to do. So
Yeah, right. Yeah, it definitely seems like that could work, at least in terms of working, and that may be enough to bootstrap it. So I'm curious about that too. So anyone's welcome to either talk to Donnie. Do you have Donnie's email? Maybe you can chat your email or something.
yeah, I would love
Or
feedback. I can put it in the chat.
Yeah, great. But I think it is interesting with that sort of thing. You're kind of building something that amplifies human power. So it's sort of, you both at the same time are gaining affordances that you can use, and you're also amplifying everything else that's happening. So it's a good idea. Yeah. And also, please just know that although we're welcoming in and encouraging these more abstract ideas, we want to make use of that. We also don't want to lose track of the direct experience of this practice in this moment. If we think that a question about our body experience right now is smaller than a question about the entire world, then I have failed to communicate any of the point of this.
Well, Jōshin, I'll say something then. I was going to say it anyway, even though you didn't. Because I don't know what everyone's talking about changing the world. I don't feel it right now. So I'm working with my own sensations of not feeling it yet, being attracted to this group week after week. So, and in my little world, I'm really concerned about healthcare and how our paradigm of what wellness is and what health is and how Western medicine fits in there. And that's where I feel energized. This is an incredible opportunity for those of us in healthcare that know something other than Western medicine to show what we are doing as a world when there's no medicine, and how grappling at, even our president is grappling and reaching for medicines that may be helpful and may not. And I'm just interested in this. And it seems like people have a story about healthcare. And I think we're going to need to change that, particularly if we get second and third waves. And if this virus mutates and all. So that's what I'm thinking of and want to be part of that.
Yeah, right.
Very much. And the kind of meditation that you led with 5 different levels of settling in, that helps me. I seem to be able to contain my big ideas and my big fears and then figure out what I'm going to do next. So thank you.
Exactly. Yeah, really well said on all fronts. It's something I found again and again. You know, people have often pushed me and asked me, does meditation do anything good? What's the point of meditation? I think meditation isn't real, or something like that. And then I keep on, because I'm modest and maybe even a little bit self-deprecating or denigrating, say, yeah, maybe you're right, meditation isn't real. But then every time I have to do anything real, I find that I go back to staying in the body. I just have to do that. If I want to do a good job, like the times that I do a good job and the times that I stay in the body are the same times. They are not different times. So definitely, I think to have that energy around shifting medicine, and especially Western medicine, is an extremely valuable, in my opinion anyway, gift. You know, we're seeing now, I think, how much the regulatory process, for example, slows things down. We're talking about 12 to 18 months to get to a vaccine, given that we follow a sped up version of the usual regulatory process, which is the same one that we use for chickenpox vaccines, which we're using because people say we need to use it. I feel strongly about this, so I don't want to take up too much airtime with it, but yes, definitely, please do that work.
Thank you.
So I have some thoughts, and they're not fully formed, so forgive me if maybe I won't be the most eloquent. But on the big plan to kind of get everyone on board with a new way of thinking, or new story, and that's maybe I'll start kind of giving my own personal point of view in what I'm pursuing this path because I also want to seek the truth, whatever that is, and I don't know what that is yet, and I'm very early on this path, and so still a long way to go. But the reason why I'm very interested in doing this is because blind belief hasn't worked for me. And I kind of I grew up in the Jewish tradition, and just was indoctrinated early, as most children are, and then science took over, as I think does for a lot of people, but for many not, or people try to balance the two, and for me, I went fully the other way, to science. And now I'm working on this spiritual path and still trying to balance that with science, and a healthy dose of skepticism, but still fully engaged. Okay, so my comment is, how do you convince? It's, I guess, a rhetorical question, but how do you convince a billion or many billion people of a new way of thinking without direct experience? Because if you want to scale quickly, to use startup speech, you won't be able to awaken everyone, and then now you're back to religion and blind belief. So that just to me is a conflict with the ultimate goal of and I'm still learning about Buddhist concepts, but awakening everyone, isn't that's the whole goal? Everyone should become awakened, right? And that without some kind of, again, I guess startup speech, without some kind of what's the word? Disruptive technology for awakening everybody at the same time or very quickly, then you're back to just teaching religion. And so I feel like that goes against the point of Buddhism, if I'm understanding things correctly.
Yeah, right.
So anyway, so curious what you think of that. But.
Yeah, excellent, definitely. Of course, the issue at the end of the day is you want to go beyond every religion. And yet we find that, as you say and as you've seen, that's really hard to do. You grow up with Judaism, and then you go beyond that to science. You think, good, I've gotten out of religion. Then you discover, oh, wait, no, this is just another religion. Oh, no.
Yes, it's just another religion. It is. Though I think it's it has problems, but there are many benefits to it. But anyway, sorry, keep going.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's good in different ways. It has different benefits and strengths that are extremely important and valuable, and yet is still, at the end of the day, a doctrine that then is connected with a way of attempting to understand reality, which is to say a religion. We find the further we go, the deeper religions we realize that we have. We discover that, oh, actually, this thing that I thought was true is also a religion. This way that I've been expecting everyone around me to be all the time, that turns out to also be a religion that I just accepted unquestioningly. I hadn't realized that. This on and on and on, whatever it is, these same issues that come up again and again and again for us turn out to be generated by religions that we had taken on blind faith without realizing that we were taking them. So yes, definitely you want to lose all of those. And at this point, I don't believe that there is a way of doing that all in one fell swoop for everyone at once. Maybe there will be someday. I don't think it's impossible. I don't want to rule it out. I don't see any reason that it shouldn't be possible. I just haven't seen anything like it, and I don't know what that would look like. That maybe would be the ultimate goal. But meanwhile, you just have to, as Tani Sarabiku says, trade up in religions or trade up in delusions. You trade your delusions for better delusions. More comprehensive delusions, delusions that make it more obvious that they are delusions. Delusions that help you get out of them. Yes. And that also cause fewer problems. So basically the issue is that this is just happening already. We don't have a choice between it happening and not happening. Something is going to win the me more. Yes. It would be great if there was a way to just cut through the entire me more. We should be striving to get to that point. I would like to get to that point. Until then, something is going to win the me more. The only question is what. And if it isn't something carefully constructed and lovingly constructed, then by default, it won't be caring or loving. So someone or someones need to just do their best. And I claim that that someone or someones are you.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. I don't know if that helped at all. What do you think?
Yeah, I guess it helped me understand the goal that you set forth. And, if there are those mystics that can see the truth and they can come up with the better story, then that can be good for mankind, right? And if you can reach many people and then there's a better story to live by, then that's to the benefit of humanity. And I mean, it's worked so far. So that's also what's I don't know, is a double-edged sword here, because people believe in stories naturally. It's our tendency, and that's why religion works, right? And that's why you have billions of people committed to different faiths. The two, let's say two main faiths of the world, or two or three main faiths of the world. So it's a system that already works, and yeah, I could see it working still. And if you include science in that, maybe there's four. So yeah, you got to come up with the new one.
Yeah, right. And I would say the historical pattern has been that there is very little innovation at any point in time in terms of these. And that's actually, I would say, kind of a good thing. So whatever it is that wins winds up taking the best of what already works and just synthesizing it. And maybe working out a few of the differences. So Zen is kind of my favorite example of this. So Zen, 1500 years ago, China, there was Buddhism in China 1500 years ago, and earlier than that, but it wasn't really doing anything. And also there were these sort of two dominant schools of thought, Taoism and Confucianism. And Taoism made a very clear statement that truth is completely beyond words, completely beyond understanding. This is, of course, expressed as the Tao that can be named is not the eternal Tao. It has a name. It isn't the real thing. Anything that you can point to isn't the real thing, isn't the true thing. And Taoism then also integrated a bunch of exploration into energetic phenomena, life extension through spiritual practice, and was kind of epitomized by these hermits who would go off into the woods and live a simple life away from society, practicing this way. And then on the sort of polar opposite end of the spectrum was Confucianism. There was a spectrum, one end Taoism, the other end Confucianism. Confucianism is saying you need to have rules, and the way that your life matters is that the regular, ordinary things that you do, your work in the world, those are the things that matter. Those are the true practice. The regular, ordinary practice, the regimented, simple relationship that you have with the broader world. This is the essence of the good life. So Zen then came along. Some people came along and then made Zen, which just did Taoism, but more so, was better at Taoism than Taoists, and did Confucianism, but more so. Was better at Confucianism than Confucianists. And you see it has these, you go into a Zen monastery and there's these precise, meticulous ways of doing everything. And the work that you do, sweeping the monastery, cleaning things up, is taken to be the spiritual path. And yet at the same time, there's something happening. You're transcending experience, you're transcending self. There's deep practice that's going on. So it's this thing that looked like a spectrum, and then Zen came along and said, nope, not a spectrum, you can do both. They're not in conflict, in fact. And yet also at the same time, there's something essential that's brought in with Buddhism that somehow integrates these two pieces. There is such a thing as awakening, and there's such a thing as complete awakening, such a thing, in fact, as Buddhahood, and that's possible. Nowadays, I would make the claim that we have three main religions in the world today. And they are materialism, humanism, and Christianity, or let's say Abrahamic faith. So Christianity, Judaism, Islam. And these three systems are often seen to be in conflict. Materialism, Christianity seem to be fighting a lot. Humanism and Christianity seem to be fighting a lot. Materialism and humanism often go together, although they are in extreme conflict with each other. Because materialism is basically saying that there is no self anywhere, that there's only atoms and molecules. You aren't actually even really there at all. And yet humanism is saying, therefore, you are the only thing that matters. Human feelings are the only thing in the world that's important. So even though they're in direct contradiction with each other, you just somehow, they feed off of each other, and you wind up taking both on at the same time. But each of them is saying something true and important and valuable. Science has a clear procedure for discovering causal relationships in the world that works quite well. This is of great value. At the same time, humanism is saying that every person's experience does matter. That it's not just that some people matter, it's that everyone matters. It's that all of the people matter. And Christianity is saying there is such a thing as ethical consequences. There is such a thing as good and bad. And it matters what you do with your life. You should do good with your life. It's saying that, and I would say it's saying that more effectively than either humanism or materialism, to a large degree. And that people are ethical and materialistic and humanistic in spite of holding those views, rather than because of them. And actually make a claim that's strong. And yet, it seems possible to integrate them, to have one system, one story, that at the same time has the rigor, the clarity, the depth of science, and yet at the same time says, not just all humans, but actually all life should be part of the decision function. Every living being matters. Every living being's perspective counts. And at the same time, therefore, there is such a thing as ethics. There is such a thing as virtue. There is such a thing as morality. So I don't know if we can do it. I don't know if we can pull it off, but it seems like we have the raw material at least. And that's what I personally am quite interested in. Maybe you could call it a new Christianity, science, humanism, or something. I don't know. I don't know what it is. But in order for it to work, it has to authentically be those. You know? Zen wasn't fake Taoism. Zen was real Taoism. It was just also real Confucianism. So in order for this to work, I would claim, I suspect, that it has to be real Christianity and real science and real, let's call it lifeism.
And it has to be, yeah, I agree. It has to be something that people can easily adopt into their already, their culture and pre-existing belief systems, because people aren't just going to blindly, people hold on so tightly to their beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
So they would either have to be like shock awakened in order to all of a sudden reject, live their entire lives believing, or it would have to sneakily, kind of get intertwined with their existing belief system.
Which I don't know if you said this on purpose, but shock awakening. You've heard of the brain zapper enlightenment guys?
I've heard of experiments with Shinzen Young experiments. Yes, the sonic, the acoustic ones.
Yeah.
And then I did read recently. There's some electromagnetic research going on as well. Yeah, but no, I didn't intend it to be connected to that. But it did cross my mind earlier when we were talking that is potentially a disruptive method of getting people to be, if that technology does work, right, then you could use that technology to awaken people without training, right? So
yeah, or certainly bring people to a deep experience.
Yeah.
So I noticed that it's after 4, so I just want to say it's okay if anyone has something they need to get to. I'm happy to stick around and talk for a while longer, but just want to make sure to be kind to people's schedules in case there are scheduling conflicts or anything like that. So anything else on that?
That's good for now. I don't want to take time away from other people who might want to talk.
Cool. Yeah, really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Likewise.
This has been very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Really appreciate you coming each week.
I just wonder from a big picture to look at the world and how we're all complying. Most of us are complying with stay at home and what that means in terms of mobilizing. Obviously, we all are believing what they're telling us and we're doing it for one reason or another. It's fascinating that we're all doing this, or so many of us in the world are doing it. So many countries and different kinds of people.
Yeah, really. Yeah, it's managed to jump across so many of the boundaries, Yeah.
But still there are rebels. And I work in Santa Monica, and as of yesterday, we have to wear masks at work, which many of us have before, and some coworkers don't, even though they know that might put the rest of us in danger.
Yeah.
And last week's talk really helped me because I want to be part of that community. I want to keep working. And she and a few others have different ideas. And I thought of what we discussed. How can I be in this community, loving, supportive, helpful, stand up for what I believe, but also allow them to have their different beliefs? And the answer is to keep my mask on all the time I'm at work, and wash my hands a lot and wear gloves, even though they're not.
Yeah.
So I'm real basic today.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, it is so
Thank you.
interesting. Yeah, we can see it. It's a nice. I think because it's so new, it hasn't had that much time to get into all of the patterns. And so when it gets into them, we can see that. And then often it isn't in them. And so we can just see the raw dynamics play out of this kind of weird polarization process. There's another example of this from a while back. It was, I don't know if you're familiar with this. I wasn't that familiar with this. I only know about this from talking to Soryu about it. There was apparently a famous tennis match between, I think, Serena Williams, and someone else. Or some ref made a call of some sort. And you could see how quickly people divided into the two camps. And each camp thought the other camp was evil and insane. And it's like, the one camp is like, and you can see that they're standing for really important things. So I don't remember what, it was something like the ref made a call, and the call was technically within the rules, but it wasn't like a reasonable call or something. And so one camp made it into this whole big thing about rules and how we have to have rules, and we can't have there be special cases. The other camp made it into this big thing about oppression and justice and whatever. Again, I don't know any of the details. This is all third hand from Soryu, so I'm not maybe representing him correctly, and he may not be accurately describing the situation, but it's just fascinating how this dynamic comes into play here. And now you see the same thing. Coronavirus comes around, and almost immediately you have, on the one side, people who, to round it off and mischaracterize it, just believe that this is fine and, it doesn't matter. And then on the other side, people who really strongly and diligently believe that you have to follow the rules. And it's been very interesting to watch that play out. And then against even the backdrop of everyone being inside all the time. I actually think that's been a huge part of what has made this such an emotionally challenging time for so many people. It's just that everyone is spending a lot of time inside. Can't go out and see friends. Can't go for a walk so easily in some cases. You're either stuck with people you don't want to be with, or you're stuck without people you do want to be with. And that, I think, is taking a big toll, kind of exacerbating the situation. I don't know where I was going with that. So it just came to mind.
That makes me think I'm worried societally things can take a turn for the worse. I've just been noticing kind of these dark feelings within myself of like mix of anger and just like I don't know, like they say pandemics bring people together, but I think that's contingent on certain factors, like having a sufficiently functioning society that brings that society more together. But if you have a dysfunctional society, maybe it drives that society more apart. Like apparently the Athens, as like the historical Athens in like 500 BC or whatever, fell shortly after it had a plague. So it's not, I don't know. So that's that consideration, worrying about that, wanting to take right action quickly enough over time, but also just, I don't know, different worrying, trying to see 5-10 steps ahead and like do the right thing. And I've just kind of been building up this like low key trauma of like not knowing what to do. I mean, that was previously the case. Now it's just feeling more of the case. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It definitely seems to me as though, again, who knows what will happen with this, but, Soryu said in a talk 4 years ago that we were witnessing the story of the United States fall apart. Stories come to an end, and the story that we've been telling, called the United States, is now falling apart. And I think we're just seeing the next step in that process. This way of organizing people and resources around a certain idea is coming to its end. How long that takes, we don't know. Maybe weeks. Turns out now, maybe weeks. Maybe years, maybe decades. But, we kind of knew this was coming.
yeah.
Yeah. And for me, it's actually been kind of an emotional relief, because I've been living in this world for almost a decade. The world of, this is not going to last. And to have everyone else all say, oh yeah, this isn't going to last, actually kind of relieving.
Yeah.
So that's been nice. I'll see you on the commune after society falls apart.
Well, yeah. So actually, that's another project of mine.
Yeah, right.
Besides.
Yeah.
Oh, did you see my FitRam Facebook posts?
Yeah, I did. I'm really interested. Say more.
Oh, yeah, cool. Thank you. I appreciate interest. Yeah. So that's one of the like. Oh, should I try to coordinate all society or just build a new one? I like. Yeah. So some guy named Tom Courier is like found a region, like a part of like several hundred miles south of the Bay Area that has really cheap land due to zoning reasons, and like plans to build a little village there of like RVs and tiny houses. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. I should get money and do that. I don't know if that's like step 1 or 5 in like the sub plan of like trying to divorce myself independently from the larger system. But so also I've been getting into urban stealth camping. I found some land by the railroad in Berkeley that you can just put a tent down. It's like pretty hidden, and I'm like concerned, oh, what if I put the tent on some grass and I'm like hurting some insects or plants? But my theory is it's like better to have the externalities in front of you rather than like invisible, which is a meme I've gotten from interacting with Oak and Maple. But yeah, I'm like I've been putting that off. I was doing that earlier this month, but like now then just again thinking about collapse again has me thinking about that again, and so I'm just like yeah, I don't know if other people are other people interested in that kind of flight. But the idea is like having that is a good way of like at least having stability from which to then fix the rest of society. It's a good dependency to have. Otherwise, I just feel like we're on a train to hell. like yeah. I do think the United States is pretty toast, and probably.
Bye, Mom. Nice to see you. Thanks for practicing with you.
Thanks for the practice. Thanks so much. It was wonderful. I have this idea that it's as though we're looking at a rotary fan and the fan is going faster, and it's so fast that you can't actually tell that there are independent blades, and you can't see what's behind it. So we have this picture that this is what's always there, when in fact it slows down enough that we can actually see what's always been there, what's been happening. And I have this, I go back and forth, but I have this sort of overarching view that because everybody has decided to look at the blade slowing down and what's behind it, that this is actually a time when we can start to do something about it in a way that other things that should have had our hair on fire haven't got our attention, but this is the thing that's gotten it. So I don't have a big idea about how to do it other than in small ways over and over every single day, bringing to bear what I can.
Yeah.
That's what I got.
Beautiful. Impressive.
I love you all, and I'll see you next week.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
I will also be signing off. Thank
Sure.
you for coming, everyone. Thank you for hosting this, Jōshin.
Thank
I'll
you
see
for coming
you
as well,
at
Dan.
the next instance of one of these, most
Take care.
likely.
Take care. Great.
I'm just noticing a lot of like I have I want to transform the negative energy into something, but I don't know. I guess I would ask for like pragmatic suggestions, or like maybe I should work that out, or sit with the confusion.
Yeah, I think it's good. I've been feeling a lot of that as well, actually. I recently got laid off from my Triple Byte remote interviewer job. And I've been considering, trying to build a project. There's a few other people now who also don't have jobs. Maybe they want to build something like crisis counseling for, Triple Byte for grief counseling or something. I don't know. But I definitely agree. I think it's good to, do both. They don't have to be in conflict. You can sit with the feelings of confusion and the desire and all of it, and at the same time be doing something. I think the Kickstarter idea is a good one. I think, if you just start organizing around that.
I've been talking to my therapist about that. I'm afraid of negative. I'm afraid of negative feedback on it.
Yeah, right.
Which I'm working on, but
yeah.
Yeah.
The good news is it's a terrible idea, and it will definitely result in problems. You can know that up front. So it's fine. It's a good idea. Do it. Thank you, Morgan. This is great. Oh, perfect. This is great. Is this... Oh, we know... Do we know? I think we know this.
I know the founder.
Yeah, right.
Kyle.
Yeah, Kyle. Oh, amazing. Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, this is so wonderful. This is listenly.co.
Yeah.
Yes.
And if you want to sign up to be a healthcare worker, organizing that now.
Perfect. Perfect. That's great. That's amazing. They already did it. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Let me just sign up for this. This is great.
Great.
Oh, this is so great.
Reach out to Kyle if you have that intention.
Sorry?
I would reach out to Kyle and say hi if you have the intention to to be supportive in this time, because I'm not sure that that happens automatically when you sign up.
Yeah, sure. Great. Yeah, great. Nice to see you, Morgan.
Yeah, same.
Nice to see you also, Andrea. It's been enjoyed having you here listening. So, it is very exciting.
I have something I could talk about.
It is an exciting time. Sad time, scary time, and also exciting time.
Yeah, that did. I don't know if you heard the last thing I said.
No.
I said I have something I could talk about since
Please.
I have you here. Since I have you here, but it might be a little off topic.
Sure.
I've been interested in like how to practice during this time. I suppose I've been in the been like in coming out of the monastery into self practice.
Yeah.
which is hard.
Yeah.
And disappointing. Even with the great fortune of roommates who wake up with me every day and sit at 7 a.m., which is wonderful.
Amazing.
So
that's
that
great.
happens. That
That's
happens.
great.
Yeah, very good. So we sit for an hour a day. Sometimes I fall asleep.
Yeah, it's harder when there isn't a sit leader to yell at you.
Yeah.
Or when you're not the sit leader yelling at people.
Yeah. I know. I would love to yell at my roommates, but we would have to be bought into that. And it's not easy to set that relationship up.
Yeah, so don't try too hard to do that. That's my first advice.
Yeah.
You probably already know.
Great. I haven't.
So
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. I have one roommate who breathes very loudly, and it's kind of like unbelievably loudly. Like at least twice as loud as probably you've ever heard.
Oh, I bet I know who it is. Anyway, sorry.
But yeah, I don't know. How do you practice on your own? Is really the question that I have for myself.
Yeah.
How can one even do that?
Yeah.
In a way, I guess the word real really has stuck with me. How do I practice in a real way on my own?
Yep.
Or do I need to even do anything to be practicing?
Yeah. 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 Of course, I have to be honest about it and share the answer that I've come to, which is don't. Just state that up front. Is that I tried that for a long time and concluded eventually don't.
Right.
Don't try to practice on your own. Move into a monastery and outsource that job to other people.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that that's the only option.
Yeah.
Looks like something's happening in the physical world. Okay, great.
I've been trying to find a place where I can go that's quiet here.
Yeah, so the good news is you're living with a bunch of other people and they're going to constantly help you go beyond yourself.
Yes.
So in that way you can relax.
Yes.
It's really good to lean on that, make use of that. And then again, I've said this before, but I'll say it one more time, just to really be gentle with yourself in terms of the practice,
Hmm.
and forgiving,
Yeah.
because it is hard, and especially when we're on our own, to, again, at the same time, it's like you want to try, you also don't want to punish yourself for failing. Try and fail again and again and again, and know that that's okay.
Yeah.
It isn't okay, and you know that, and so good. You don't have to put any extra effort into that, so it is okay.
Yeah.
To really cultivate that sense of excitement and acceptance and forgiveness about what you're doing. To say, intentionally even. You wake up and it's the 5th day in the row and you've missed meditation completely, and you've been eating or whatever it is, or the stupid thing that you do, and then you'll say, all right, here we go. You can do it, Morgan. Today is the day. Let's give it a shot. Can I sit for 5 minutes today? Let's find out. Nope. Okay. That's okay. It's okay. Let's try taking one mindful breath.
Yeah.
Okay, great. That was great. And just lower the stakes, lower the bar, be gentle, be forgiving, and make use of whatever momentum shows up. That's the main advice. And then beyond that, be in regular contact with a teacher of some sort. Do retreats if you can. Make time, maybe every month or maybe every year or something, to spend some time with practice being the only thing that you're doing, and to interact with someone who's qualified to help you out in that.
Yeah.
And obviously, follow ethical standards. Be working to uphold.
Yeah. Yeah. And don't forget, yeah. Also, follow, extremely difficult ethical standards. Yeah.
Yeah, so forgiveness, self-acceptance, all of that applies to upholding ethical standards.
Which go against everything that's happening around you all the time. Yes.
Yeah, and then you have to compromise and accept different things, different standards and such. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, the point with the precepts is really, it isn't so much about getting to perfect as it is about dancing with where you are.
Yeah.
So you're around a bunch of people who are killing, try not killing so much, maybe you kill. Okay, here you are. It's not great, but it's not. You don't want to add on self-shame and guilt on top of that.
Mm.
You want to work to reform that or resolve the issues in that situation, but in a way that's sustainable and practical.
Yeah.
And loving. When I was in Toronto, I was working at Interaxon, and we would go out and drink most nights together, and that was nice. It was fun. It was sweet. It was a nice way to be together. May not have been ethically perfect, but it was a good way to be connected. And at the end of the day, that's really all you can do, is just give yourself to what's happening around you completely. Find out how much joy there is in that. And then through giving yourself to that, you find that it transforms, and you transform. Well, I should probably get going. So thank you all for coming. Really appreciate it. Really value my connection to each of you, and please take good care of yourselves.
Likewise, thank you so much. Take care, everyone.
Much love to you all. Bye.
Goodbye.